Well, hello. I think that we might have some people with us already. For some reason, Oh, hello, Sharon. How are you? For some reason, my webcam appears to be incorrect here. I don't know why. Let's see if I can figure out how to hear without turning off the live feed. I don't know. This might be beyond my technical expertise. Hey, George, can you see? Oh, hey, Wendy. All right, good. I guess we'll go with it then. All right, so it is 7 o'clock Eastern time. So why don't we get started here? I thought that we would want to be talking about the Supreme Court and the abortion pill decision and all that stuff, but as it turns out, I did a little survey here, and according to the survey, it says that most people want to talk about Clarence Thomas, which is understandable. He certainly has generated a fair amount to talk about. Hey, Toms. Also, there other things that were possible discussion topics were possibility of more indictments for Trump, next steps in the current Trump case, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the least chosen topic was the abortion pill injunction topic, which kind of surprised me. So I guess it goes to show what I know about public opinion. So there you have it. But lots to talk about today because some of the other issues that are out there that really just kind of came to the fore today was we have more happening on the debt ceiling standoff. Now, I know most people's eyes glaze over when we talk about that, but Hillary Clinton wrote an op-ed today in the New York Times that was really interesting. Some of you may have seen it, that talked about the fact that literally we are endangering our status in the world as a leader in the world by engaging in these kind of brinksmanship discussions here. And she said that back in 2011, the last time this became an issue, she, of course, was Secretary of State. And so she was concerned about the fact that we're doing it again. We're literally undermining our own credibility overseas as the rest of the world looks at us and says, can we really rely on the United States to be a reliable partner? And that's a good question, actually. All right. Also, next, we have Biden potentially announcing his candidacy. They thought it would be today, but I guess now they're saying it's going to be tomorrow. So we shall see what happens with that. I mean, one interesting thing that I've seen is people say that they're unenthusiastic about Joe Biden. Actually, I had lunch today with a good friend of mine, and he is running again, Wendy, definitely. And that's kind of the reaction of most people. Not necessarily enthusiastic about it, but he's the leader of the party right now. So I think that most people would certainly rather see him go than not go. And the truth of the matter is, I wonder, for most people, was he ever really most people's first choice anyway? It seems like he kind of ended up being the pick by virtue of the fact that everybody else kind of fell by the wayside. And he has beaten Trump. Yes, exactly. You're right about that, Tom. So there is something to be said for Biden in that regard. And my guess is, despite claims to the contrary, that Trump will be the Republican nominee again. He was your first pick, Wendy. Okay, well, I mean, he definitely had to be somebody's first pick. So I wasn't mine, but that's okay. I actually think, I have to say, when I was talking to my friend earlier about this, I actually think he has done, generally speaking, a very good job as president. Have there been some stumbles? Of course. They complain about the fact he doesn't have enough press conferences, but it seems like that's been a steady decrease over the years where presidents seem to have fewer and fewer press conferences. So this is really, I actually should do a chart on that, kind of track how that's going. And of course, people complain about Afghanistan, but to me, I actually look at that from the other end. as he was in the process. So there's a lot to be said, I think, for his record. I think that the economy actually overall is doing pretty well, even though people don't think it is. He's done an amazing job in foreign policy, especially dealing with NATO and uh, yep, I think you're right, Wendy. I do think he can beat Trump in the general. That's one thing is, the first time when Trump ran, people didn't know how bad he would be. They thought, oh yeah, he's crazy, but how bad can he be? And granted, Hillary Clinton warned people, and she was right about everything she warns them. But um, Exactly right, Thunderbird. And actually, I agree with Joe Biden on this point. He says, "Don't compare me to the Almighty. Compare me to the other guy." He's right about that. We live in an imperfect world. There is no such thing as a perfect candidate. Jesus Christ is not running for president. And as I used to joke when I worked in government myself, even if Jesus Christ were to appear nowadays, you'd still find 10% of the people who complain about the traffic he caused. So there is nothing that's perfect in this world. And as a result of that, you're going to have to. Yeah, exactly, Wendy. We have to deal with the reality, which is, he's not perfect, but he's done a competent job. He has really, I think, generally speaking, kind of turned down the political, the pressure cooker that's going on, despite the efforts of the right, really, to keep things as high as possible. It's pretty amazing. All right. And of course, big news today from Fox News, Tucker Carlson was fired. So we shall see what that's all about. Was this a reaction to the Dominion lawsuit settlement? It kind of seems odd to me that he would be the sacrificial lamb for that, because of the fact that you've got other people like Maria Bartiromo, who are true believers and who have continued to push the lies. And he actually at one point had gone on TV and said, hey, there's no evidence of the fact that this election was stolen. So who's to say? I don't know. That's a good question. If there are going to be other firings. We saw that Don Lemon was fired today from CNN as well. Kind of a totally different situation. Lemon, of course, has kind of been in trouble ever since he made those comments about women. Yes, you're right, Sharon. I also heard that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is planning to run for president. I think he might be running as a Republican, though. His big claim to fame is he is a vaccine denier. So we shall see. But in terms of him, Tom, my understanding is he was fired, actually. And in fact, it was a surprise to him. With Tucker Carlson, I guess he's kind of been aiming to, I guess, causing trouble for a while. Some people have speculated that he wanted to leave to run for president. I personally don't buy that. I don't think he wants to run for president. Maybe he has some other job lined up or something, wants to get out of his contract. I don't know. Bottom line is, though, I think pretty much it's pretty clear both of them were fired. So big news today. No, Trump is running for president. I think there's that Shar, unfortunately, he is probably going to be the candidate for president. And, the truth is it's a mixed blessing. I mean, we know that Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump. So, there could be worse things than that. And people know Trump and they generally speaking don't like him. So, you hate to kind of underestimate these things. And, back in the last election, I was nervous when Democrats, for example, were supporting certain right-wing candidates in the theory that, oh, they're so right-wing, people will be turned off by them, they'll vote the other way. But as it turns out, it worked. So I think there might be something to be said for the fact that kind of the broad American middle has lost their stomach for a lot of the craziness that comes with Trump. So what other good? There are a lot. I mean, for one, actually, the one that I hear talked about a lot is actually my governor here, Gretchen Whitmer. She's been doing a great job, by the way, and very popular. For all the talk about DeSantis, and you're right about that, Wendy. Having a big reelection last year, the anti-DeSantis is really Gretchen Whitmer here in Michigan, and Michigan, you have to remember, is a swing state. We have had Republican governors recently, and so it's not like this is a state that's overwhelmingly Democratic. Tom, I too like Jamie Raskin. I actually knew him long before he had run for Congress. I knew him back when he was a professor, actually, at the law school at American University. He was somebody I had some dealings with in a number of situations, and good guy. My guess is, he's got health issues now, as we know, which would certainly stand in the way. It's very demanding to run for president. He also, I think that he's happy in his role as a member of Congress. He's very effective there. And, there's something to be said for being in the leadership. I mean, look at what Nancy Pelosi was able to accomplish as speaker, just staying in the House. So there's something to be said for being in the House and rising up to positions of leadership there. And my sense is Jamie Raskin has really developed a good position there for himself. So we'll see what that, but I'm a fan of his as well. Totally with you on that. All right. Other issues then. Jean Carroll, defamation/battery lawsuit starting tomorrow in New York against Donald Trump. She had been basically blocked by the Department of Justice, claiming that when she wanted to bring her original defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump, that it was based upon things that he did while he was president. So the defendant should not be Donald Trump personally. It should be, I agree with you about that, Tom, by the way. It should have been the United States being the defendant, because the president, of course, being the head of the government, gets, the United States gets sued when he does stuff, and the government can't be sued for defamation. So that kind of ran into a bit of a brick wall there. Fortunately for Jean Carroll, Trump is stupid enough to make stupid comments after he left the presidency. So she filed another lawsuit then based upon the stupid comments he made after he left the presidency. And what's more is New York actually has survivor statute that says that there's no, essentially no statute of limitations on bringing battery cases in the case of rape cases. So so as a result of that, this claim that she's bringing that starts tomorrow, it's a New York State case. It's for defamation and battery. Battery is the claim that you bring against somebody in the absence of a specific rape statute, because battery is a tort claim for it's defined as a touching that is not authorized. That's not authorized by the person who's being touched. So that actually is the claim. That is not a criminal case, though. That's a civil case. So she stands to get some damages against Donald Trump. That'll be interesting to watch. But still, very interesting. Trump was deposed in it, and didn't say much, I understand, but it'll be interesting to see. That is where he couldn't identify Jean Carroll and thought that she was his ex-wife. So that goes there. Let's see. Hi, T. Just going down here. Shar, Supreme Court is a disaster. You are absolutely right about that. And Clarence Thomas is, the sad truth is, unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot they can do that the president can do about him. The remedy for the misbehavior of Clarence Thomas is for him to be impeached. And the problem is that requires the same process that you would have for impeaching the president, for example. There have been judges who've been impeached, federal judges, but what it still requires that you get the vote of the House to impeach, and then the trial in the Senate where they have to get 2/3 of the Senate. So is it likely to happen? I think the likelihood of it happening is nil. And unfortunately, Clarence Thomas, for his part, kind of knows that. And, he kind of thumbs his nose at everybody else. He likes doing it. He enjoys being the provocateur and causing trouble and knowing that he can do what he wants and nobody can do anything about it. And you kind of get that sense with him. So that's about that situation. But the bigger news to me, though, in the Supreme Court is, if we're going to shift gears here a little bit to talk about the Supreme Court, is talking about the abortion pill case. Did anybody see the dissent by Alito? It is unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So you had basically 7 members of the court, including the 3 Trump appointees, saying that the that the abortion pill should remain accessible in the United States while the case kind of winds its way through the courts. So while the appeals are going on, the pill should remain available. Now that's an important finding because the standard for granting that kind of an injunction, one of the requirements is that there has to be, well, number one, irreparable harm. Number two, there has to be a sense that there's a strong likelihood that the plaintiffs could prevail, or that the party who's asking for the injunction could prevail. So they're saying essentially that they think that the government's got a strong case, that the government's got a strong case in defending access to the abortion pill. So that's good news, especially given the fact that the three Trump appointees voted for that. Now, the Alito dissent, though, which was signed on, of course, by Clarence Thomas, our good friend, is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Aside from the fact that he totally disregards any interest that women might have in this, and any potential damage that women might have based upon the fact that they lose access to health care as a result of it. His big argument is that they should not grant this injunction because of the fact that he didn't think the government was going to comply with it anyway. That is absolutely absurd. I can't believe that a Supreme Court justice would actually deign to make an argument like that, for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's absolutely no evidence for that. None whatsoever. Nobody who is associated with the government has said that the federal government was not going to comply with an order of the courts to stop distribution of the abortion pill. Secondly, that's not a legal argument. You can't essentially take something that is completely outside of the discussion of the law to decide that there is no potential harm to people. He's essentially saying that the potential harm that occurs to women doesn't matter because the government's going to ignore it anyway. He has no basis to say that. So it's one of the most appalling decisions I've ever written by a Supreme Court justice. So absolutely unbelievable. The only reason, because, well, I mean, you're not wrong about that, Wally, because there is something to that. I mean, part of the reason that the pharmaceutical industry is so concerned about this is that they say, well, hey, they are if they are able to go to court and basically block a pill that has long time approval of the FDA and has been distributed for a long time, and that there's all this evidence that is generally speaking safe and effective, then they could do that with any medicine. And that's the concern that the pharmaceutical industry has, and why they've stepped up and said quite clearly that they want the courts to overturn this decision. Odds are, though, that the Fifth Circuit is going to at least, if they don't overturn the Kaczmarek decision from the Amarillo, Texas court, they will issue some opinion that's at least somewhat supportive of it. The big question is, what will the Supreme Court do? And I think that we got a good sign from the Supreme Court in them granting this this injunction. Exactly right, T. Yeah. What other medications? What's next? And that's what the pharmaceutical industry is concerned about. Where is the end to this? There's this philosophy that you have. Hey, there's this philosophy that we have in the system, in the judicial system, and in the administrative process, that we need to defer to the expertise of the experts in the agencies. These various federal agencies hire experts. They hire scientists, they hire economists, they hire experts who are qualified to be able to make decisions about the different issues before them. And courts shouldn't step in and overturn those decisions as long as those decisions were made on a well-informed basis with proper notice to everybody, and there was a good process that was followed. Well, in the case of the FDA approval of this, there's no question about that. I mean, the process was followed. It's been legal for 21 years or something like that. And suddenly they're going to say, oh, no, now we're going to step in and overturn the expertise of the people who work in the agency. It really goes totally against the history of administrative law. So it's really a big issue. It's going to stay. Yes. At this point, Wendy, the bottom line is for now, it's going to stay as it is. And ultimately, the question is what will happen once it reaches the Supreme Court, which is probably where it's ultimately going to be resolved. Now, I agree with what you're saying, Wally. And I'll tell you, I mean, aside from just the legal outrage that you get from reading Alito's opinion, the good question. I love that. AA. I remember. I'll call you that because just to make it easy on me. But there's something to be said for that. It seems like they are practicing medicine without a license, but unfortunately, judges have that privilege that they're entitled to rule on the law. And in this case, he's totally wrong. That's what appeals are for. But boy, I tell you, I wish that we could impeach him. That judge, it's just unbelievable that we have this judicial circuit in Texas. You have to understand the way that when you file a case, it basically goes to a court, and then every judge within that district there's a lottery to see which one is going to hear that case. So, for example, I filed one federal lawsuit a little while ago, and it was here in Detroit that actually, it was in Macomb County I filed. It got removed to federal court in Detroit. And then it was assigned randomly to a judge who actually was out in Ann Arbor, which is about 50, 60 miles west of here. So I had to drive out to Ann Arbor for every court hearing because of the fact that just Ann Arbor is part of the Detroit district, and every judge within that district could have gotten that case. So they have kind of this random process of allocating these cases based upon who the different judges that are there. Well, as it turns out, you have this one judicial district in Texas, in Amarillo, where there's only one federal judge. And guess who that federal judge is? It's this Matthew Kacsmaryk, who's this right-wing ideologue appointed by Trump, who's made it clear that he's an abortion absolutist and basically a right-winger. He actually worked for as legal counsel to some right-wing think tank before he was appointed judge. So I don't know. I mean, goes to show you, it's just unbelievable that exists. Hey, 69 Shaner. All right, well, you're right down the street from me. I drove past that earlier today. All right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, Josh Hawley's wife wanted to go there and file a claim because they can get this crazy judge. You're absolutely right about that. All right, other news today then. Bed Bath & Beyond files bankruptcy. That the reason I bring that up, that's actually been a big topic of discussion in my house today. All the different Detroit area media have been calling me up to get my expert take on it, because obviously this is an issue that I handled back when I was a bankruptcy attorney. So I've had to deal with that. So that's one issue. Ukraine counteroffensive. What's going on there? It seems like there's a big counteroffensive that's planned. And as it turns out, the big news on that is that I guess that some Ukrainian troops are actually across the Dnieper River, down in the southern part of Ukraine, where the Ukrainians had taken back territory from the Russians. There was this river, essentially, that blocked them near the city of Kharkiv. And that blocked them from going further. Well, as it turns out now, there have been some Ukrainian troops that have been found across the river. So this could be the start of a counteroffensive then that is going to push further into Russian-held territory. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. There's definitely going to be some offensive happening, and it's especially notable given the fact that the Russian offensive has been a complete disaster for them. So that's one piece of good news there. Well, fingers crossed on that. We'll have to see what happens there. Then My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell, he says that he will give anybody $5 million who can prove Mike wrong. And guess what? He has to write a check for $5 million to somebody. It turns out that not that this is any surprise to anybody, but that everything that he's claimed about the election being a fraud is completely false. And unbelievably, somebody is actually able to prove that. I don't know how they did it. I guess it was with some kind of computer analysis or something like that. And as a result of that, they were able to show that Mike Lindell was completely wrong. I'm with you, Wendy, on that, by the way. And as a result, he has to write a check of $5 million to this guy who was able to do that. And then on the business side, one more issue is that these mid-sized banks continue to lose deposits, like First Republic. So that could endanger our banking system even more. I'm with you on that, Wendy. So big stories. Those are all from the news today. It's hard to say. Yeah, T, I agree with you. It does seem like it's an easy bet against Mike Lindell. The problem is this: how do you prove a negative? How do you prove that there was no fraud in the election? I mean, with well over 100 million people voting across 50 states. I think it was 120 some odd million. It's hard to prove specifically that there was not sufficient fraud to at least impact the election in some place or another. Yes, I'm with you on that, Wendy. So it's hard to prove, but apparently they actually had a process where they had an arbitrator appointed, and the arbitrator found that the guy had proved his case, and so Lindell has to pay him the $5 million. It's funny you say that, Tom, because it is hard to believe that he actually will pay. Reason being that that he's broke. I mean, he's not that wealthy anyway. His pillows haven't been doing all that well, and he's been paying all this money in all kinds of litigation to try to prove this arguments that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And as a result of that, he it makes one wonder if he's going to be able to pay that. The funny thing is, I was in the dollar store not too long ago, and they had a group of shelves where they have, as seen on TV. Guess what was there? You got it, My Pillow. So much for My Pillow being such an incredible success. Yeah, it's going to, I don't think there's anything that can shut him up, but anything that shows. And here's the problem: how many times do we have to prove that all these claims are false? How many times do we have to prove that? We've heard it in the Fox News Dominion lawsuit. Clear evidence there. They knew these claims were false, and yet they still said them. Mike Lindell now has to write a check for $5 million. There's been every case that's been brought has been thrown out. Where does it end? And yet these people who are the MAGA crowd, they still insist on believing this. It's a case of cognitive dissonance is what we call it, where basically, because they want to believe it, they're going to believe it. They're not allowing the facts to determine what they believe. They're believing something, and then kind of picking the facts that they're going to pay attention to support that belief. The facts that they're paying attention to are pretty loose, to say the least. But hey, there you have it. So that kind of is the rundown of the news items out there. What do you guys want to talk about? What are you all concerned about? What's your biggest at the forefront of your mind? I don't think I don't think any insurance company would pay us fines because of the fact that typically, just and this is kind of just a legal issue here. Typically, insurance companies do not pay for what are called intentional acts. So if you were to go out and run into somebody by accident in your car, your insurance company would pay the damages for that. If you were to go out and say, take your car and decide you're going to run down people, like that guy, where was that, out in Chicago, or was that Milwaukee where that happened a little while ago? If you were to do that, the insurance company would not pay because that was an intentional act on your part. So in this case, our good buddy Mike Lindell is engaging in intentional acts, and as a result, he's not going to be covered. Defamation, of course, is an intentional act. I mean, that brings us to the E. Jean Carroll case. We've got the E. Jean Carroll case, and the basis for her case, as I said, on the one hand, you've got her claim that she was raped by Donald Trump, which of course he denies, and he's got a lot of credibility on that, as we all know. On the other hand, though, he so you've got the rape claim. That's a battery claim, as I say. The other, though, is defamation. How is she defamed by Donald Trump? Well, she makes the claim that publicly that he had raped her. What he does then is say, no, it's not true. She's a liar. That in doing so, he defamed her. Okay. Now you have to remember, an absolute defense to defamation is truth. So what she can do is say, it's the truth. And if it's the truth, it's not defamation. Or it is, it's not defamation as far as, and him claiming that she's a liar would be defamation by her being able to show that her claim is true. So that's kind of the basis for this lawsuit. Could it be another judgment against him? Could be. We of course have in New York. We still have the Letitia James, the Attorney General, still has that lawsuit going against Donald Trump, based upon his essentially lying to lower his property taxes. So that's still going. That could result in a judgment against him. So he's got some problems there. Sure. So an issue that I had not brought up yet, Texas enforcing religion in schools. I'm with you on that. That is a big issue right now. It's really shocking to me that we see what's going on in Texas. We see what's going on in Florida. My goodness. It's just unbelievable to me. I can't believe that this whole book banning that they're having in the libraries has not been overturned already by some courts. North Carolina. Where else did I see that there was some? I think somewhere out like Wyoming or Kansas or something. There was something that was going on out that way. Where they were, I think it was Wyoming actually, where they were passing something not just to ban books in the school libraries, but to ban books in the public libraries. And what's more is there have been a number of cases, and this was something that Judd Legum of Popular Information brought up, which is the fact that in many of these places, what they're doing is when I think this happened in Indiana. He pointed to an example of this, and might have even been in Michigan. But what they were doing is where the library was resisting their efforts to ban books, what they did is they defunded the library. Why not? Librarians, you have to understand, they actually typically are people who care about books, care about reading, care about the spread of knowledge. Typically, librarians actually have a master's degree, at least, in library science. So they tend to be well educated. And most of them are looking at this and saying, we can't allow book banning. The whole reason we went into library science is because of the fact that that we believe in the spread of information. So the idea that government is getting in the way of the spread of information is really outrageous to them. So you've seen in a number of places where librarians have stood up to these local, like county boards or city councils and that type of thing and said, no, we're not going to get rid of these books that you deem to be controversial. Books, which, by the way, include things like The Handmaid's Tale. God forbid we talk about that. Or I saw that there was a biography of Martin Luther King that they were trying to ban. It is terrifying, Tom. And why they're messing with library books, Wendy? They don't want people to know the truth. Unfortunately, the fact is, if people know the truth, then it's not going to support this charade of lies that you're constantly hearing out of the mega crowd. So, the first thing that you need to destroy when you're trying to create an autocracy is knowledge and the truth. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So as a result of that, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. But I can't believe even this Supreme Court, I cannot believe that this Supreme Court will stand up and say that the First Amendment is so worthless, that we're going to allow local government and state government to basically define what we're going to have in our libraries. I just don't see how that complies with the First Amendment. And it's unbelievable to me, these people, they claim that there's nothing in the Constitution that says that there needs to be a separation of church and state. I don't know what Constitution they're reading, and they talk about how the founding fathers, they wanted Christianity. The only place that God is mentioned, or the Lord is mentioned anywhere in the Constitution, is when they say "Year of our Lord." Nowhere else is it mentioned. This is a civil constitution, and there are even other documents that support the fact that there should be a separation of church and state. There are statements by founding fathers to that effect. I think I did a video on that talking about some of the evidence of that, but it just is unbelievable to me that they're able to engage in this fraud, that somehow, we're a Christian nation. And as a result, Christianity should be at the center of everything we do. No, that's what I'm saying, T. They were not. In fact, most of them, certainly Thomas Jefferson, for that matter, were what they would call deists. That was kind of the most popular kind of philosophy at the time, which means that they, it's kind of what do they call that time period? Blanking. It'll come back to me in a second here. But most of them, and what they believe is that God created the universe, but then kind of let it go. They talked it like the yeah, exactly, like today's spiritualists. They talk about it, but even less involvement of God in people's lives than that, because they believe that it was like a watchmaker, they call it, that God made the universe, set the watch, and then let it off to run. That's what they said. But beyond that, let me just be clear about something. I consider myself a Christian, and I am appalled. And I'm with you there, Wendy. I am appalled at the way what these people say Jesus would have supported. I got news for them. Jesus was not about bullying people who are gay or poor, or not helping people who are sick. I'm with you there, T. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they it is just unbelievable. So, and as I say, I mean, there are statements. As I say, I think I did another video on this. There are statements, I think, by Thomas Jefferson and others, and there's actually something in a treaty that was passed by the U.S. Senate, supported by most of the signers of the Constitution, all of which say there's a separation between church and state. The United States does not have a state religion. People can do whatever they want. And let them do what they want. I mean, that's the thing the way I look at it. With libraries, you don't like the books, don't read them. What's the problem with that? But what they're trying to do is they're trying to stop things from going forward. Yes, the 10 Commandments. I mean, this is another one of these non-issues that keep getting brought up by these conservatives, that somehow all our problems are going to be solved by bringing God back into the public square. That we need to follow the 10 Commandments. I mean, I don't know how you can tell me that's any different from like what the Taliban is doing with Sharia law. They say, oh, we need our laws to be based upon the laws of our religion. So they say, oh, we should have the 10. What's the difference? These are still archaic legal codes that were drafted thousands of years ago. In the case of the 10 Commandments, we're talking something, I think, 2,500 to 3,000 years ago that this was drafted. And I got news for them. It wasn't Moses standing on top of a mountain who got them. It was a bunch of legal scholars sitting in oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of the city in the Middle East where the Jews were at one point banished to. All right. Well, all right. It doesn't matter. But point being, yeah, as Tom says, no difference. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Wendy, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but the United States still great country, People still want to come here. In fact, one thing that's interesting, and this is especially here's a great example of exactly what is driving the conservatives crazy. Immigration is up. Oh my God, immigration, we're being replaced. People with brown skin are coming, and, we're now no longer going to be a majority white Christian nation. Oh my God, imagine that. That's what they're scared of. That's what they're scared of. So the fact is, people still want to immigrate to the United States. That's a great thing. Immigration, I remember at one point hearing somebody say, I think it was something on the radio, that that the number one competitive advantage that the United States has relative to other countries in the world, when we're looking at kind of the competition for economic growth, is immigration. And that is true. That's what's given us our strength. Certainly look at what's going on in Japan or France or some of the other countries that have really struggled as a result of the fact that they have this declining birth rate. Well, among people who are born in the United States, we have a declining birth rate. Where do we get the growth in our nation? From immigrants. So, that's a good thing. But the problem is then that, as far as the right-wing white conservative Christians are concerned, that dilutes their power. And that's what they're afraid of. So, yeah, it's funny you say that, T, because that's what Jesus said too. That's what he actually said were the two commandments. I always mention that that story that I think it was the Pharisees asked him, what's the greatest commandment, and he said, that love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. I don't know and I don't know how being mean to gay people fits in with those two commandments, but that's just me. Exactly. That too, Wendy. Yeah. They do, though. They actually, if I'm sure you've heard about this thing, the gosh, what do they call it? Yeah, exactly right, T. The oh geez, I'm forgetting what they call it. They have some word for this thing where supposedly, because of the fact that the world is going to end and there's going to be all this fire and brimstone and everything, because of their misreading of the Revelation book. There's that. Then they claim that the good Christians, the people like themselves, are going to be removed. The rapture, that's what they call it. They're going to be removed from the earth, and taken up to heaven, so that everybody who wasn't a good Christian ends up getting essentially thrown to the wolves in the end of the world. That's kind of what they were joking about in that movie. I think it was The End of the World. Was the name of the movie, and that's what the books. There are these Christian books called the Left Behind books. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. There have been some movies made of them. They're big within the Rapture. Exactly right. There have been some conservative. They love them in the kind of Christian conservative community. These Left Behind books. They're supposedly about the people who are left behind after the rapture. That being you did really. That being said, though. Nowhere in the Bible does it say anything about a rapture or anything like that. This is all just made up stuff that came up from later. So, yeah, you could be right about that, T. But but that being said, the problem with the Bible is it was a book of its time. The Old Testament in particular was written for people, 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. It was written in a different world back then. The New Testament was written 2,000 years ago. So, very different worlds back then. And that's true. The USA is not mentioned in Revelations. All right, Jim Jordan, another good topic. Boy, sure, you are coming up with the good topics today. Where Jim Jordan. Well, before I go to the next topic, let me just take one moment here. I need to give a special thanks to my Patreons, Horse Rider, Thomas Alfred Roll, Patrick Butler, and James Canny. I just think it's important to mention them. As you know, this channel is completely run out of my own pocket. There is no funding for it, and it does cost some money to run it. So I'm not complaining, but I do appreciate the help that anybody is able to give. So I do feel it's important to recognize them. All right, so Jim Jordan needs a statistics class. You are right about that, T. I think Jim Jordan. I mean, Jim Jordan needs a lot. Jim Jordan. I love when they refer to him as Jim, as in GYM Jordan, because of course we know about his history there. He's part of the Republican pedophile caucus, and yeah, but I just saw something today about how he's got some new claim that they were, so yeah, that's right, T. How they have some new claim against Hunter Biden, and how they're going to show that, the Hunter Biden laptop, more conspiracy, and oh my God, can you believe this? And it turns out that the evidence that they have is exactly the opposite of what they claim it is. So Jim Jordan's trying the best he can to try to create noise, and exactly right, Tom, and to try to make things seem bad. And T, the answer to your question, I will tell you exactly what is. They are trying to distract from the behavior of the Trumps. They're trying to say to the average American out there who doesn't pay attention to politics and government the way we do, that these people who say that the Trump family, that they're a bunch of corrupt, whatever, no, they're not any worse than Joe Biden. So that's what the obsession is. Hunter obviously has gone through some tough times in his life. I think that some of I've posted some videos that either mention my daughter or have actually been put together by my daughter. And she has struggled with drug addiction herself. She's doing well now. In fact, she's doing very well. She's in school right now, so that's great. I think that Hunter also has struggled with drugs. I mean, it's a scourge out there. And I remember during the debate when Donald Trump started attacking Hunter Biden, and I thought Joe Biden's response was so moving, where he said, I love my son. He's gone through some really hard times, but he's doing well now, and I'm proud of him. I think that there are a lot of people out there who could relate to what he said. Certainly I can relate to that. So yeah, I think that that was very moving. But he obviously has made some questionable decisions based upon his background. I mean, this whole him selling his artwork. Come on, really? That was unnecessary, I thought. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's a scourge out there, this whole drugs thing, and every family is dealing with it pretty much. So the fact that they are trying to make use of the struggles by Hunter to kind of create some kind of noise, and every time they point to something, I think I've done some videos on this, it ends up being overturned, or not overturned, but shown to be false because of the fact that the timing isn't right. For example, like a lot of the claims that they're making about, Hunter Biden, he has these deals with China. He was selling the influence of Joe Biden. Joe Biden wasn't vice president anymore at the time. So what influence was he selling? He was out. He was a private citizen at that point. He didn't have any influence. He wasn't even a senator. So, they're just trying to create noise that can then be put on Fox News or Newsmax or one of those other channels, where they can argue then that, Trump and his family aren't so bad, because the Trump family, talk about grifters. I mean, these people, it's not just about, they've struggled with drug addiction. These people were downright criminals who made tons of money from Donald Trump being in the White House, and were unapologetic about it, and would steal more and continue to steal more. I tell you, how somebody can donate any money to Donald Trump and his campaigns now, I just don't understand. I mean, I don't understand a lot about the whole Trump cult. but that one really just amazes me that, but people have been giving money to those, evangelical preachers and everything. He's not that different. People, willingly took the poison, with Jim Jones. I mean, unfortunately, there is a certain element of people who are going to follow these con people, and that's what the Trumps are, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm with you there, Wally. I mean, and I'm with you there, T. As I say, my daughter has really struggled, and it's been a challenge. I feel the need to make one recommendation here. If there is anybody who's got a family member who's struggled with drug addiction or alcoholism, my wife and I were involved in Al-Anon. Great organization, very helpful to us. Has really given us some peace and serenity, even at times when my daughter is not doing well. So I strongly would encourage everybody anybody who's been touched by this, to look into a local Al-Anon chapter. If you want more information, you can just message me, and I will certainly be happy to share you any information. Will this lawsuit against Republicans be successful? You see, here's the problem. Okay. Generally speaking, defamation cases are tough to win because of what's called the Sullivan standard. And the case that they're talking about is New York Times v. Sullivan. And what that case says is that unless you can show that there was actual malice, when you're attacking someone who is a public figure, that type of claim cannot succeed. And Donald Trump, for example, he's filed defamation lawsuits many times. He's lost all of them because of the fact that he was deemed to be a public figure. And so people, as long as they weren't saying something with actual malice, then they couldn't win. Well, in the case of Hunter Biden, they probably will say that he was a public figure. I mean, you have to remember, he did have certain government positions. At one point he was appointed, I think, to the Amtrak board, and he's been in other public positions, which are going to make it that he's going to have a hard time claiming that he's not a public figure, even though, technically he's never been elected to any office. Yeah, I'm with you there, T and Wally. It's been very helpful to us. Yeah, and Wally, yeah, Alatine. I'm looking forward to my grandson being old enough to be, and he's actually getting there, where he'll probably be going there, because I think he's got, he could benefit from that, given everything that we've been through. All right. So unfortunately, Shar, my guess is that he will not be successful in that lawsuit, but you never know. You never know. It's always worth bringing. But that's where, like the Jean Carroll lawsuit. I mean, she's actually got some good evidence here of the fact that what Trump was saying was with actual malice, that he was actually attacking her to try to hurt her. And as such, that is the type of thing that would be beyond the protections of basically the public discussion that we have over issues. Yeah, you're right about that, Sharon. There are all kinds of questions about what actually was on the laptop. But again, even the best evidence, if we give them the benefit of all the doubt here, we say, okay, let's acknowledge, if we were to acknowledge that everything on the Hunter Biden laptop is accurate, that all of the assumptions that they're making are accurate. If you look at the timing, it doesn't work, because when he was supposedly selling this influence, Joe Biden wasn't president anymore, or wasn't vice president anymore. He wasn't president yet. So as a result of that, he had no influence to sell. And them trying to claim, this conspiracy selling, it's not the same thing at all, as the Trump kids making hundreds of millions of dollars while their father was president and while they were supposedly working at the White House, or where they were getting different approvals of intellectual property rights in China, for example, and trademarks that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. All those things are just outrageous. Okay, I get the I'm old enough, T and Toms, to get the reference on that. Not one of our finer moments as a political party, I'm afraid. All right. So what else? Anything else before we're coming down to the last 5 minutes of our talk here? Anybody have anything else you want to talk about before we call it a night? Let's see. What do you say? Any predictions here as to whether DeSantis is going to run or not? My guess he is going to run. Anybody wanted to make a prediction on whether yes, Disney. Yes. Let's hear it for Disney, huh? Oh my God. DeSantis is absolutely beside himself how Disney outmaneuvered him. I have to tell you though, there is a piece of me, a tiny little piece of me that wonders if this wasn't all a setup because of the fact that you have to remember, I mean, Disney is big politically in Florida. They have the largest lobbying operation in Tallahassee. They support all the politicians of both parties. They're very active politically down there because they have a lot of stake in Florida for obvious reasons. And I have wondered if this wasn't all just a setup, that he went to Disney and said, okay, look, I'm going to make these attacks on you. You guys just go and take away the power. And then I will, I'll look like this guy who's standing up for, against big bad Disney, who wants to be nice to gay people, who wants to be woke. And so that thought has occurred to me. But given the reaction that he's had afterwards, it makes me think that they really did outmaneuver him. And I mean, he should have not been surprised that they'd outmaneuver him. I mean, they've got lots of very smart people who work for them. And if he thought that they were just going to sit there and let him walk all over them, I think they were kidding themselves. And so you got to give them credit. And I think it made him look like an idiot, made him look like an incompetent. But, it also, there's a certain point at which, oh, thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. There's a certain point at which you have to ask yourself, is he helping himself with this whole culture war stuff? I saw an article just this morning talking about that there are questions as to whether he's actually gaining the momentum he wants to among Republicans. I guess that our good friend Kellyanne Conway was on Fox News talking about the fact, I was actually thinking I might react to that video, talking about the fact that, there are questions being raised. I appreciate it, Sharon. Thank you. That there are questions being raised about whether he's actually generating the kind of enthusiasm that he hopes to by doubling down on this whole anti-wokeness attack. Personally, I think that it's probably worked pretty well for him with the true believers in the MAGA crowd. Yes, you're right. Losing the donors, but among the problem they've got is they've got this true believer, right wing, Christian conservative, white nationalist group within the Republican Party, and they are a big enough group that they can determine who wins the primaries, I think. And that's who DeSantis is trying to appeal to. The problem that he's going to have, though, is ultimately the same appeals that are going to appeal to that group are going to turn off the broad majority of people who really don't like this stuff. I mean, let's face it, most Americans are not in favor of bullying. Most Americans are in favor of, gay people being able to live their own lives. Most people are in favor of, treating people with different colored skin or different religions the same as anybody else. Especially as you start to get to younger people. The more you get to younger people, the more open-minded they are, the less intolerant they are, or I guess I should say the more tolerant they are. So the idea, oh, thank you, Shar, I appreciate it. The idea that he's that he's somehow going to win some big majority by building on this whole anti-wokeness agenda, I don't think is really going to help him. So, all right, thanks, T. I'll do my best. All right, so I think that we are about out of time now, just looking at the clock here. I agree with you, Wendy. They will be at each other's throats. There definitely will be a Republican primary. I mean, we've got Nikki Haley running now. We've got Of course, Tim Scott said he's running. We're probably going to see a couple others get in at least. So there's going to be a primary, and you know that there's going to be no holds barred because Donald Trump is involved. And it's going to be enjoyable to watch. So with that said, I think that's probably a good place to end this. Chris Sununu, I used to work in New Hampshire, so I know the Sununu as well. And let me just say this. It strikes me as odd what passes for a moderate nowadays in the Republican Party, because the Sununus are not moderates. But yet, compared to these white Christian nationalist nuts who make up the MAGA crowd, they look like they're totally rational. So, just looking at my clock here, we are running out of time. I need to go help put my grandson to bed. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank all of you for your interest. Let's go out and spread the word. And feel free to send me messages anytime. I love to hear from you. Love to hear your comments and love to hear your input. And hopefully we'll be able to spread the word and make sure that we're able to continue to get everything. Yeah, I'd like to do this more, these monthly meetings. We'll definitely do more of them in the future. So let's keep in touch, and I will be talking to you all later. Take care. Bye.